Hello everybody and welcome to the review vlog for One Punch Man. There would be a lot to say about this series, but I'll keep this brief because, well, the show is brief. It is quick, it is fast-paced, yet it is not shallow. It is, shall we say, easy to digest and understand, but that is more due to the story being laid out to us rather efficiently and easily. It is easy to understand, quick to grasp, yet it does not insult your intelligence, while still remaining amazing to behold. And it certainly is a visual spectacle that is beyond marvel. It is like, okay, it's not, I'm that bit exaggerating there, but it definitely is a series that I thoroughly enjoyed watching. So let's first get the statistical facts or opinions, whatever, out of the way. I loved the visual design of the show. They had a very clear aesthetic to the show that they used throughout all of the character designs, and while the monsters were certainly so varied that they did look like out of this world, that was kind of their point. Especially the final boss, who was certainly alien in design, yet still rather humanoid enough to be an understandable threat. While all of the human characters do share similar designs and a surprising amount of realism to them, they are still different enough and definitely like they are pushing the boundaries of realism or what can be believably understood as human, although in the Genesis type side they are not human. They are still realistic enough to be believed to be human, disregarding few exceptions. Especially during fight scenes, though, the animation is, well, let's say the animation chooses to take some liberties with the realism and instead tries to accentuate the action and goes for far more dramatic style than realistic style. And that is good because the action is meant to be like that, and that's why it is truly enjoyable. The action is over the top, very fast-paced, quick, yet clear. Now, if you look at the behind the scenes, you can find a lot of information about how they did the animation. It is pretty amazing how they made the action seem so very amazing, because the animation is definitely one of the best parts of the show. It is really good to look at, like really one of the most fun shows to watch that I've seen in the past, well, in a long, well, maybe forever. I don't know. It's definitely up there. And they still managed that with a very average budget, and that is mostly due to some actually trickery that they put into their show, which makes it seem far more impressive than it actually is. There are some tricks and, shall we say, some sleight of hand tricks that they made to make it seem something more. But that's just good, because that shows that they had passion and they wanted to make it as good as possible, and that just shows the passion that the animation team had behind this project, and that shows through completely, and I love that. On the animation side, just in general, the animation is good, it's fluid, and it's good, although they do have very static animation in most situations, but that is mostly due to the, well, they have a lot of situations where people don't have to move. That can be accredited to the fact that they had a average budget and they didn't want to overexpend it on situations where they didn't need to. Yet they did have a lot of situations where their backgrounds and characters were so detailed that it is hard to imagine that they didn't actually kind of overspend on that situation. But again, that could be just accredited to the passion of the team. Sound design wise, this is perhaps the place where I have the most neutral of an opinion. I have not much to say about the sound. It's just very acceptable. It's nothing stellar, yet it isn't bad, and especially the opening, it has become somewhat of an iconic opening in the past few months in the internet. Or that's how it feels like, considering where it shows up, and just in general the show has received a lot of positive attention, and even I love the opening so very much that, like, the opening is pretty good, and it starts out really well. It's one of the best ways to start an opening with a huge chord. I could go a bit more in detail about the opening, since it actually uses a lot of interesting audio tricks to make it seem far more bombastic and heart-pumping than it actually is. Again, it is something where they definitely kind of spared on the budget with some trickery to make it seem far better than it actually is. That's not to make it bad, but that's to say that they saved on the expenses with intelligence, and that's just something I want to like make sure that I'm not saying that they were lazy or bad. I'm saying quite au contraire. They were amazing at using, like, they basically created gold with basically nothing. It's just amazing. The story department is one of the most peculiar things about the show in general, because the story is rather basic, at the very least in the beginning. Or not basic, but it's simple, and seems rather shallow and something very unnoteworthy, kind of like the main character. And that is actually one of the show's greatest strengths, how far it can go with this kind of concept. They don't really they don't kind of waste time hanging around with that subject. They're very basic premise for long, before they get to the hero association where things actually kind of ramp up really quickly. Yet they do show us enough of their everyday life to make it seem a bit more realistic, and that is certainly something I do appreciate of the show. Then they move on to Hero Association and things just kick up a notch, and the show actually kind of like, or the story itself actually kind of intelligently weaves into the show a lot of conflicting storylines and plot lines that kind of mesh around well with our general, like the general storyline there, and give sense of some different adventures and life that goes on around the world without our main characters actually interacting with that. And one of the interesting things about the show is the lack of the main character's interactions with the storylines, and rather that he just comes to clean things up. It really does show that you really don't need to, even though the show does surprisingly often resort to telling rather than showing, it does kind of make up for that when it, like, it is a comedy show. It's not supposed to be looked too deeply into, and it definitely works in that manner, since it does kind of, it uses somewhat heavy-handed, ham-handed, so let's say just really clunky exposition to tell us some of the background story. But then it kicks into high gear with the fights, and it becomes amazing, a marvel to look at, and kind of makes up for that. And then you remember, hey, I'm having fun again. And that it certainly is. It certainly is fun, pretty much all the way around. And then in the end, they still do manage to give a lot more to the plot and make it seem. They open a few new avenues for exploration in the future, and they make it a bit more intricate, and there are still a lot of potential where the story will go, and I am certainly looking forward to the second season, and that is why I really like the show, and I will heartily recommend this to basically everyone who wants to view something entertaining. Now, it's not intellectually the most challenging show. In fact, you could say it's a pretty dumb show, but I choose to use the word simple, because even though it is easy to digest and isn't the most deepest of experiences, it isn't shallow, and it isn't insulting to your intelligence either. And the character interactions are somewhat very heavily influenced, especially the character interactions between Genos and Saitama, and especially the philosophy that Saitama goes by, is some of the most actually surprisingly heaviest depth that the show has. And it is rather nice to experience and see, because even though it is not exactly the most unconventional of philosophies, in effect you could say it's rather ordinary, it is still rather admirable, and the way that he expresses it is maybe not the most unique, but certainly interesting to watch. Saitama himself is an interesting character in the way that he both, shall we say, is not only a walking meme, he's a walking joke, while at the same time kind of fully realizing all of the, well, all of the tropes of superheroes, down to the complex methodologies of their philosophies as well. But there's a lot more that could be talked about, that his philosophy and the good and right and bad, blah blah. But those are just basic. Those are not related to the show exactly, because they're not the important thing here. What is important is that the show is enjoyable, the characters are amazing, animation is freaking fantastic when it needs to be, and the show just comes together really well, and the story is very well self-contained in this one season. The second season has not been confirmed yet, though it is very apparent that it will be coming at some point. However, I won't be sad if it doesn't come, but I will be more than ecstatic enough to watch it when it does come out. So without further ado, I thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all in the future have a great day and stay awesome. Gunmu out. Thank you very much for watching.